Okay, welcome everyone to the November 6th Sewer Advisory Committee meeting, and we're getting started right away with approval of the minutes from August 14th.
So moved.
Any discussion? Okay, they're approved.
And I also noticed that when I was going through the file that the minutes from April had not been signed either, so if you guys could sign both of them. They were approved, they just were never signed.
Okay, great. Moving on, we're going to hear about the storage building update.
All right, so the storage building update, project's near completion. Majority of the work has been completed in-house, and it's expected that it will be approximately $30,000 under budget upon the full completion. We have some floor coatings to go on and shelving to install for pallets, and that will complete it.
Do they have a ribbon cutting?
It's going to be one of those things you block out. I don't know about a ribbon cutting.
That one too? Okay. So you're celebrating. How happy about that? Are you using it quite a bit? Nothing in it yet?
After the final completion, I'll be celebrating. Still, still.
Is this the same storage building we were talking about 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Yep.
You haven't missed much. See, you come in, you're right back where you were at.
Yeah, but we saved money. Look at the $30,000 under budget.
Yeah.
Done in house. That's
But they had to do most of the work,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, we know that. Good job. Okay, how about the CIP projects?
Yeah.
So we have a ton of those. So the 2019 CIP CAS engineering assessment was, the engineer report was estimated at over 700,000 improvements or modifications. And so we looked into ways to cut the cost significantly to still improve the operations, and the reason for the study was we didn't feel like there was significant aeration to treat for the design of the conventional side of the plant, and that's really what it was determined. So got prices on a lot of the stuff. Some of the stuff is kind of out there. It kind of determined that we were under designed initially for the aero strips. We were designed for like a 1.4 MGD for the conventional side, and we're averaging around 1.6 just on our average, and our design for the plant is 4.2. So one of the 2020 capital project is a CAS aeration upgrades for 100,000, because we feel that we can purchase necessary additional aero strips to be at design and replace them, do the work in-house also, and be under that. Also, one of the related to that was the CAS aeration. We determined that the aero strips, there weren't enough. Avivo, who owns Aerostrip now, had re-quoted us and said, your system's under design, this is what it should be. You can't maintain the required air needed to treat our process. And so we
The microbes or something need oxygen. So
right, they need a certain level, so we have a hard time just even maintaining a 1 on the DO, and which causes filamentous organisms, low DO organisms pretty much thrive, and so we're
Don't settle good either.
right. There's a lot of things that lead from it, and we started kind of from the beginning of that, determining where all of our shortfalls were, and there's air channels around the conventional, also diffusers that had been like original install at that plant 30 years ago that were broken or missing, and so we were losing a lot of our air efficiency out there, energy costs. Just trying to maintain the amount of air in the basins was difficult. So a lot of the stuff we started doing in-house this year, the air channels, those diffusers were cheap enough to to purchase. You know, they were $17 a piece. We have like 100 of them, but I think like over 70 of them were broken or plugged. We started trending the air. We would get like a 2 leaving the final basin, and by the time it got out to the clarifiers, it was under a 0.2. So it just, you know, there was no oxygen by the time it got to the end of the channels because of this. So a lot of that stuff we're returning to the beginning process again, and it's really already in that low DO state, you know, that filamentous state, and it, you know, so it that's one of the things we started doing already in house. It was the cheapest fix, and when it comes to upgrading the aero strips, you really have to take care of everything related to the lines and everything before you put money into those, and so that's what we've been doing is and so I think that's one of the major issues. I mean, with that is the aeration, and that's what the study was about. And yeah, so we're going to do the aero strips, doing the diffusers, and another one is for the 2020 budget is the CAS blower replacement. I got a really good quote. We don't have a redundant blower for that side, so we've had blower shutdowns, and you know, at one point we went off line with no air for 16 hours this year, which almost killed us off. You know, if it wasn't for the MBR side of the plant being able to pick up that slack and take some of our heat, we would have been in trouble. You know, so we were able to kind of mend it while we were getting the air back in line and bring the conventional side back to life, which wasn't available, you know, the last 5 years or more, having an MBR, so it was pretty helpful to have the MBR. But we don't, like I said, we don't have a redundant blower. We had an HSI for years that has never really been in service, so I got a really good quote from Atlas Copco that purchased HSI, and they're giving us a half-price offer on a blower. So, you know, normally blowers are around $60,000. They sent us a quote for $30,000, which is a huge.
Why are they doing that?
They bought the HSI and didn't realize kind of what they were getting into, and they don't want to.
Reputation?
They don't want. They have a really good reputation, and they treat people good, and they don't want that. They're trying to get out of all those HSI contracts and trying to mend everybody's feelings at the same time. And, yeah.
So, I was going to say, if you, Jay's new, but if you recall, this is actually part of a process that started about 6 years ago. We started going through the plant and making sure everything was where it needed to be, and basically addressing things that were not covered in that old plant under the upgrade through 2004 and 2006. We had taken care of the digester, we had taken care of the primary, the screenings and grit removal. Remember the domes on the digesters, all the mixing system. We had taken care of the solids handling, the screw press and all that. This is the last section of the plant, and the MBR got taken care of. This is the last section of the plant to be addressed in that long-term project. And so basically telling you some of the deficiencies that have been confirmed by engineering consultants, and you know, basically what we're going to do to address those deficiencies to get them up to where they should be.
So in the long-term planning, this is what I heard was that we're doing a replacement of the blower. But is there a point in time as the plant gets more and more fluent, processed, is there a reason to have redundancy though in some of the systems?
So I can
At
answer
some
this
point- and
better
that's-
than Marty because I understand what happened during the upgrade process. So redundancy is required in the treatment plant. And so during the 2004-2006 upgrade, Ecology actually allowed for them to do a multiple redundant blower. So what that meant is they took one piece of equipment on two separate processes and said it's going to be the backup for each one. It sounds good. The problem is there's no cascading controls, which means there's nothing to control that blower. So for instance, and they had a situation where the blower went out and it did an alarm, there's no automation to turn that blower on, so nobody finds out until you show up the next day. And what they're trying to do is get a redundant system. If they replace this blower and tie it in with telemetry, then if there is that kind of situation, it will start up automatically, and it's not a shared redundant piece of equipment. So there's true redundancy there.
Thanks. All right, I did that one. So that's where the engineering assessment enough for that one. So we have that stems from the 2019 and so I went into the 2020 for the basin diffusers and the valves. And then the deck coatings is another one. It provides for, that's a 2020 capital project. It provides for the overcoat of deck coatings applied to the concrete and roof and deck surfaces. This is a recommended maintenance interval for the coatings applied in 2013. Currently we have numerous spots throughout the plant with deck cracking and curling up in the seams. So that's what this would focus on, is they didn't take too well to the seams. Exterior coatings, this is provides for the maintenance of additional coatings of exposed steel structures within the facility, not addressed in 2019. We have some cracking, corroding steel around the plant that, that's got UV damage and needs some addressing. The CAS aeration upgrades, we read that, and the CAS blower. And then we have like 2020 capital outlay, our in-house projects. We've done a lot of stuff this year and trying to continually improve the treatment plant. So we have effluent sluice gates. The old ones are original cast iron sluice gates that are in place or in the outfall. So the outfall is always flowing. So to work on them at this stage is, they're really expensive and they're old. And so I started getting quotes for stainless 316 gates, and we plan to put them on the opposite wall so that we could work without being underwater or wastewater, and have a dry side anytime we wanted to work. It's inside the contact channel of the clarifiers. Got quotes for the stainless steel gates, and the price for two of them is the same price as one of the cast iron gates. And these are new modern gates. These actually come with the actuators also, they're not manual. We just did a repair on one of the cast iron gates, and just for one of the lift nuts was $600. So yeah, and so it's really and it's existing gates are original cast iron, are in need of constant maintenance and repairs with limited access. We received a quote for different material, and we're able to place an order on 2 stainless gates for the price of the cast iron. And this will be an in-house project next year. We have secondary wet wells, scum pit and lines. This installation will also be in-house. This will improve plant operations as well as process conditions, and it will save on labor costs and fuel. We have clarifier skimmers that skim all the surface scum or contact channels to this scum pit, but the only place for it to go is back to the beginning of the plant and just recycle itself nonstop through the plant. So when process is concerned, you don't get rid of it. If it's dead or if it's floated, it just stays there until somehow it finds its way out. And so these are, we've been having to trash pump the contact channels for years, taking hours and really days sometimes with fuel. And these were installed initially and were not.
So, yeah, in the original plant they were installed, and then for some reason they came up with some shortages in some of the electrical controls they needed. So in order to put the electrical panels in, they cut the lines to these pumps. Someone determined that they didn't need those, and then installed the electrical panels. And the plant's operated like that for years. But going back to the original design, they were in the plant. So they do need to be there, especially when we have a solids handling facility that can take that material and completely remove it from the biological process instead of taking it, you can only spin it around in a circle so many times and eventually it's going out the outfall. or it stays in the plant, and it just keeps compounding and creates process issues. So it's costly to keep re-entraining. It'll be like going in and mopping your floor, and when you're done, just dump the mop bucket on the floor. You really haven't gained anything. You were clean for a while, but you just threw it right back there, so it's not a very good situation.
Well, you gotta realize too, the plant was built and it cost 14.2 million. The city and the district rates were $550 a month, and we jumped them to, I think it was 12 and soon after to 14. So it was a huge financial strapping on the district and the city, so there was a decision made to cut some costs, so we didn't pay any more than we had to at that time.
Again, going back and addressing that segment of the plant, the last segment of the deficiencies that are being found.
What year was the plant built?
85. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, put it online, did we?
84?
84,
It was,
85.
yeah, 84.
And
Yeah.
what was there before that?
Just,
Primary, same thing
Primary
up here.
Lister, similar to what you had down
Down
here
here.
at the Marina Pump Station.
Skim the toilet paper off, send the rest out.
It got,
Yeah.
it got 60% of the flowable solids, so 40% went into the bank. And we're doing right now, we're doing really good. We're probably getting 98% somewhere in there.
We're averaging
Because
this
down
month
at
of
the plant,
96.
if you go in,
96. So
there's actually a picture of
yeah,
the plant before
I'll have to
the
take a look at
addition.
that. Uh-huh.
Because I found it in all these pictures at Retzel.
Yeah.
And it was,
Russell used to own the treatment plant down there.
so
The
I,
district bought it in, I think it was
so
63.
anyways, this here, so are we creating a pit? For
No, we
this
have
stuff?
the
Or
pits are there.
the pit's there, but nothing's going in.
No piping.
So currently
Okay,
stuff
thank
does
you.
go in it, but it just returns to, it goes to a lift station and then back to the headworks.
So it's
So
just,
it's just kind of research.
So basically, we want to like collect it and just get rid of it, like to put it into.
digester.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what's going on.
And so that's an in-house project for this 2020 also. Fence repairs and extensions around the back of the plant with stream modifications and storage building. Pre-existing fencing was removed to accommodate the needed space. Missing fence is a safety and security issue currently and should be addressed. The plan is to contract this job out since we don't have any fencers at the house, at the plant. We've, a couple times through the years, there's been some people inside the plant when people have came to work.
Been kids in there.
Homeless,
So,
yeah.
yeah, kids.
Inside the plant? How did they get in?
There's several ways in. One, it would not be very hard even for someone my age to get on top of the sign and jump over that little short fence. Remember, there's a 10-foot culvert, 9-foot culvert that runs underneath. There's no fencing or anything there.
Yeah, and
Right
then,
at the creek.
then we've had them walk over the pipe there coming off of Only. Caught some kids that somebody had called, and one time they had walked. There's some barbed wire and stuff there, but they basically stepped over it somehow, and they've seen them on the pipe. And so who knows? I mean, there's so many ways you can walk in by the creek on the backside too.
They weren't actually inside the building though. They were
No.
just on the,
Right.
on the grounds.
Yeah.
Right.
But they could fall in a basin.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
That wouldn't be a very pleasant night stay. Yeah. But, okay.
Well, the basins, if they're aerated, you can't swim in them. You'll go to the bottom unless you find a pipe to crawl back up, because you can't float in those with that air in there. It's lighter than the normal water would be,
Interesting.
so you go right to the bottom.
Oh my gosh.
Right, then we have the administrative building flooring. Flooring is old. It's 13 years old. It's worn and stained and is due for replacement. This also would be contracted out. We were looking at potential of the carpet tiles for, depending on the cost of them, so that if they do wear, we can replace parts of them in multicolored so nobody would ever know. The final one is
Shades of brown.
Shades of brown, yeah.
right. Wow. And green. The final is a capital outlay for next year. Is the SCADA server room upgrade. The upgrades will be done in house, and we'll focus on bringing it up to code, removing carpet, raising the floor a little. Yeah.
You took care of the rat problem.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, did you get them all? No, you didn't.
Yeah, it's been. They actually did an excellent job on that crawl space. It was old and probably should have been done, anyway. Nobody noticed because nobody ever went there, but it's pretty nice down there now. I might actually move there if they start doing that. If they start doing that mileage thing. Pay by mile, I'll be in there. Kid will be in each beam.
Yes, it'll be an each beam,
The
right?
boy that lives under the stairwell.
That is all I have for those updates.
All right. Moving on to the budget revenue, huh?
Okay, so, and I know we discussed this before, I'll just bring it up real quick, and it is included in your budget folder. If you remember the ERU counts for 2020 from the city and the district, the city had an increase of 152 ERUs, and the district had an increase of 146, and that takes us up to 298 ERUs total. And that's 49.5%, 50.5% with the district being ahead by 1%. I don't know how the city's looking, but based on the way things are going, we anticipate that the numbers are going to be greater than that next year. We know that we have a lot of things sitting there ready to go. I think the city's in a similar condition. A lot of people seem like they got started and they're just, these plats are just sitting. So we're anticipating that those counts will either be...
We have a little moratorium thing, and it'll be solved
Yeah.
at the end of this month, and we've got a backlog right now of 20 permits that are ready to go out the door as soon as they can have water.
All right, moving on to the budget. You'll have a copy of this. What you'll see is it's similar to what you've seen in previous years. We are working to do what we can to simplify the information so that it's an easy read and easily comprehensible for folks. You'll see some minor changes happen in the budget in the next few years. We want to streamline some things and kind of realign some things just so they're a little clearer, so that you're not having to try to understand all the shifting of money that happens, so that it kind of paints a clear picture. There's a couple things that I will point out in this budget. Currently, in the current budget, and keep in mind that we just made our debt payment for the SWRF in June. We're on track with our current budget. Matter of fact, in September, we are 1% below the budgeted revenue. And that's what's making that, what is it, about, I think it's 29% of the operating budget for a debt payment. So they're doing a great job down there, keeping everything in line with the budget. That June always hurts us. And I did send you folks also the mid-year budget status report, so everything's looking pretty good. In this budget, we're looking next year, our debt service program is going to be approximately 27%. Again, it dropped by a few percent, but it's still up there. We're still working on the 20-year CIP. We'll keep updating that. If you folks remember when we talked about that, Marty talked about the capital and the maintenance projects for next year. And also he'll touch on the 2020 or 2021 projects we're looking at. There is a constant dynamic to that as things come up, revenues, regulatory requirements that may come out, those type of things. That's what we keep constantly looking at. So when you do look at that 20-year budget, I ask that you focus on the next couple of years and not really put a lot of weight into things down in the future, because they are going to shift quite a bit. We're looking at 2020 of a total budget of $3.45 million. Might as well call it 3.46. That is down a little bit from 2019. The goal that we constantly have for both the city and the district is to try to sustain that ERU rate as long as we can, because I know that from the district's perspective and the city's too, we're both working to try to kind of deal with all the growth that's going on. We have a lot of capital outlays that we need to look at, and we want to do everything that we can in that facility within reason to keep that contribution down until we're all in a better position. And the nice thing about it is this debt payment starts reducing, and as long as these connections keep going this way, we should be able to sustain this for a little bit. So, but it is dependent on, you know, the connections to continuously come in. So that's one thing that, you know, we're kind of happy about when the numbers were crunched. There is a proposal in the budget to add an additional $50 per month for each employee for medical, dental, and vision insurance, including long-term disability. The district uses the PEBB program through the Healthcare Authority in Washington State, and every year the prices go up a little bit. It seems like just a little bit here, a little bit there. And basically all we're doing is keeping current pretty much with where we were a few years ago. This is not like it's any financial advantage for the employees. I don't know how the city's doing with AWC, but it seems like the rates just constantly keep going up little by little by little.
You did pretty good this year.
Did you? Good.
Yeah, but what's the total we're paying now with this $50 increase?
Do you guys do a split with your employees?
They have out-of-pocket expenses also.
But or sorry, premium split.
No.
We do a 90-10 split.
Yeah. And so what is your average out-of-pocket for your employees, do you know?
50 or 75 bucks.
Yeah.
I want to say.
I pay $135 for me and my husband.
So it sounds about right.
Yeah.
So I think the city pays, I don't know, before you guys were paying like $1,200 or $1,400 from the city's portion.
What's that?
Yeah. I know this is a few years ago, you know, because when we went up 50 then, you guys were paying, I think, $1,200. And we were at $950, and, you know.
So, going into 2020, we're projecting we'll have about $300,000 more in beginning fund balance for this work than we did in 2019. Also, the Bureau of Labor Statistics number came out for
Page
August,
7.
and that would be a 3.2% increase in the COLA that is being factored into the salaries.
3.2?
3.2 for August.
Because the CPIU is 2.3.
Which 2 months? There's several.
It's an annual one.
They're every 2 months, annualized every 2 months.
Okay.
So we use the August for both the ENR-CNI, which is the Engineering Construction Cost Index, for adjusting our GFCs and connection fees.
Okay.
And then we use the August for the CPI for our rates and for our employee COLAs.
Let us know what page you're on. So
I'm just thumbing through. And
yeah, but as you thumb
highlighting.
through, it's nice to know where you're at.
So, one of the things, if you look on page 9, that we're doing in 2020 is you see the capital outlays that were identified in 2019 and the actuals in 2019. We're moving those over to the equipment repair and replacement fund. The reason for that is the SQRF does not really have what I would define as fleet vehicles. We don't have police and fire and all that. So that equipment replacement and repair fund that we've used, we want to move the capital outlays where we go back to replace or repair capital equipment that we've already purchased. We want to move that into the equipment repair replacement fund so that we can easily identify where those are. And then that'll start helping us move the capital outlays. You'll have one place where you know where all those capital expenditures for replacement repair of equipment are going to be lined out. In that you see, if you go to, this would be page 22, you see where those show up there as capital outlays, and where we will basically fund whatever we think we need directly into that ER and R And so there will always be a good positive balance within that fund. It'll be easy to identify where those capital outlays are being taken from, and a place to identify them more clearly. We'll start breaking them down and be a little more detailed on how those expenditures are being made. Of course, you'll see the one that says equipment replacement, and it is identified as unplanned. These are things that just happen, and we don't know. It picks up a lot of cost for a lot of little things for maintenance of equipment. There's a lot of what I will call nickel and diming that happens in that. You know, you need to go out and buy, $500 parts for this piece of equipment, or $300 here, and this
$600 nuts.
Yeah, this is, and that's exactly what this is. Is that equipment replacement is kind of a catch-all for everything that we haven't clearly identified as a defined replacement. So that's one of the things you'll see. On page 9 again, you can see that our debt obligation is dropping down about $15,000 or more than that. And next year our debt obligation is going to be $3.1 million. Again, both the city and the district were asking to contribute $200,000 out of your capital fund where you've collected your GFCs and to help pay that debt. We've been doing that for several years, and we want to make sure, again, we can do whatever we can that's affordable for the city and the district to maintain that lower ERU cost for the two entities and still sufficiently fund this work. That's pretty important, I think, to the city, and it's very important to us, too. If you look on page 10, it basically gives you just a quick overview of the enterprise fund and variances between 2017, 18, 19, and 20, and what's gone on with the finances within the SWRF. Not a lot of changes. You will see that it's been fairly stable as far as the revenue. There has been pretty good trend up, and your expenditures are pretty stable also. Page 11 explains a little bit about some of the things that are going to be expended, along with page 12. Then if you open up page 21, this is that 20-year capital improvement program that was planned.
So we did for some last year.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah, what we're going to do, you're going to see some of the formatting change in this too. We want to simplify some things, and as much as we can, I know we have to make some assumptions, but we want to limit the amount of assumptions that are made. We want to actually take good trending data and come up with some of these values versus saying, we're just going to assume a 2% growth for the next 20 years. Well, historically, if we go back to our ERUs, that tells us that that 2% or 1% is really not a valid number. And statistically, we're not really taking historical values and trying to project those out. We just want to make it a little more consistent with what's been happening so that we can align those growth numbers along with what we project as those additional assessments to the city and the district. Not that they'll be spot on, but it still helps both of us understanding with planning purposes what we can anticipate the cost of the SWRF is going to be to each entity. So that's pretty important to us. Page 22, again, the ER&R fund, we talked a little bit about that a while ago. This is for equipment repair and replacement within the facility. And we are transferring out of the operating fund into the ER&R fund those capital expenditures that we can define and the miscellaneous that usually happens. And we also want to, have a little buffer there in case something major happens. It's not that we have a lot of excess revenue at the SWRF, and there's not a lot of buffer. We're just trying to keep ourselves in a situation where we have a few safety nets here and there. If you take a look on page 24, you've seen this. This is basically our ER&R fund schedule, which is nothing more than clearly defining, obviously, Our contractors' equipment, very limited, and we have 22 days. And we'll be working on cleaning a lot of this up, like I said, to make it a little easier to understand. The last portion after that is the financial management policies of the district. And there was a change in 2019 to the financial management policies. And that change that was made was the debt write-off. So we had no policy to write off bad debt, and we had a lot of bad debt hanging on our books that had been there for years. So we.
How do you get bad debt?
Uncollectible.
But if there's always that's on the
this is on the district.
district side. I'm going.
But it's
how's the plan? You pay into it. You pay into it. Who's not paying?
But no, the financial management policies are part of the heart of operating the
Got it.
SWRF.
It's your guys' bad
Yeah,
debt.
Right,
just
right.
notifying you there were changes to those policies, so if you have.
It was being carried on our books for years,
Yeah,
and it should have
there's
been
updates
wiped
to
out.
that policy.
I mean, I'm just curious, you guys don't file liens so that you get it when the property sells?
We do,
Yes.
but we don't, since we put the two together with water, the first bill goes to water and then the sewer, or sewer first, then the water, so
So the answer.
we don't have too much problems with liens anymore.
The answer to your question is yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes, we file liens, but in the past, the district went the route of turning it over to collection agencies.
Oh, so you're
Yes.
writing off 50% of it?
Yes.
Well, and also sometimes in a foreclosure you don't get paid.
That's true, But these were all bad
As liens
debts,
are dismissed.
non-foreclosures, yeah. So.
Randy, I know I probably missed it. What are you guys doing for reserve fund? Do you maintain a reserve?
So we don't maintain a reserve for, you mean for a debt obligation?
Actually, for operations and stuff too.
That would
Emergency
be,
fund.
we don't really have a reserve fund. That is the carryover balance that's out
Okay,
here.
so that's
That's our
what you-
buffer. And same with the equipment replacement. That's why we want to move everything to that ER&R, these capital outlays, is so that we can build up a quasi-reserve fund by having a financial buffer in that fund.
But you don't list it as
We don't
a,
list
you
it,
don't
no.
try to keep it as percentages, more just
No.
a growth. Okay, I mean, it's very healthy.
The
It's
district,
not up.
yeah, the district does, the SWRF does.
Does not.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the other thing we've always have is that when we get the assessments for the treatment plant, the city keeps theirs in a separate account, we keep ours, so if something major happens, then we would look at those funds as our first draw after a meeting. I mean, we'd have to have a meeting and say, the tank broke and we're looking at, and, the other thing is, we haven't looked at as a SAC committee, should we get some earthquake insurance? And if we do, then we gotta look at what amount. We do have some, the way it works through the pool is that, I think there's 25 million that they have, but it's over all the people in the pool, so it could be used up very rapidly.
Very quickly.
In the upgrades that you guys have been doing, again, just curious, but the upgrades you guys have been doing, have you been doing any seismic retrofitting at all? Or?
So the plant, when it was upgraded in 2004, 2006, that portion of the plant was seismically retrofitted and upgraded. When we did the screw press and the solids handling, we did have a structural engineer come out and review everything, and yes, there was some seismic retrofitting that was done. Some could not be done because the construction of the building itself is elevated, but it was done where it could be done, yes.
Okay, one more question. Have you looked at all or thought anything about Shake Alert to shut things down? Or?
So, yes, we have, but the problem is it would put us in non-compliance with our NPDES permit, which will not allow you to shut anything off. Wow. You have to have equipment redundancy, and so therefore you cannot shut off equipment. So, I know what's been sold with Shake Alert. I'm not dispelling that. I'm not an engineer. But if you do the proper structural calculations when you install equipment, then those issues should not really be an issue
In a treatment plant.
in a treatment plant.
Okay, yeah.
Doesn't mean there aren't going to be issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all know that, you know, you need to use, you know, your depths, your berries, your
Mm-hmm.
steel, all that has to be done for your platforms. All your bolts should have a certain shear. Matter of fact, you know, when we did the screw press, every nut and bolt we acquired for that project, we had obtained from a company that sent us certifications on all those, that they met those requirements. That didn't necessarily happen on previous projects, and unless you're fully controlling what's going on, you know, a lot of times you can't tell the difference between a, you know, 75,000 pound shear bolt and 50,000.
Yeah.
That's why we wanted certifications, because we knew once that equipment went in and we were responsible for it, even with the engineering, we wanted to make sure everything was there so that, you know, there was no potential for injuries or death because somebody put a wrong bolt or just felt that they didn't need it or came up short one. But yes, it's most, if not all, everything that's put in past 2004, it's all been rated for that type of rotating assembly, those type of movements.
Okay, thank you again, just curious, I didn't mean to hold up the
No,
meeting, so.
No, but the other thing, I think DOE needs to look at it as something that you could use, shouldn't be a violation of the Clean Water Act to use precautions, because you don't get those shake alerts until they have a certain intensity.
Magnitude, exactly.
And so, you know, I mean, what I've seen of pumps and stuff that are, when they do shake and they are running, it's amazing the damage.
Exactly.
And also the fires. And we've already, you know, I mean, it's something I think should be addressed in the future myself. I mean, that's just my opinion.
So,
I'm not
to
planning
answer
that.
your question, long answer your short question, is all that information I did provide to the company. I can't remember the gentleman that used to work for RH2.
Dan Irvin.
Dan Irvin. I've supplied it to him several times. He has told me he was going to work with Ecology. I still haven't heard anything. So that was over 2 years ago.
And he's no longer with RH2, so
Yeah.
he's still doing shake alert, but anyway.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think should be addressed, and it's something we would like to have for our district, to at least shut off our pumps and stuff, because it just.
Well, we're working with Dan and his new group to put the seismic, the equipment for shake alert at our new well 13. So as we work through that, I'll just kind of put a bug in his ear and ask him.
Well, yeah, and so one of the things that we're doing, we also know there's a couple other entities that are actually actively installing Shake Alert.
Lakewood and Silverdale, yeah.
Yeah.
And so between Morgan and Randy, the two general managers for that, we'll give it a year or two and see what they really think after they've spent that money, if there's good value in that expenditure. We don't want to be, unless our commissioners first change their mind, we don't want to be on the bleeding edge of technology. Cutting edge is great, we just don't want to be on that bleeding edge. So we want to see how it pans out.
Because we were doing R&D stuff
Right.
Yeah.
15 years ago. 12 years
Well,
ago.
the biggest problem is why we
And
don't.
you know where we went, so
Yeah,
we don't
it
want
went
to go there.
nowhere.
And how are we really going to know how well it works until we have an earthquake? I mean,
Right.
really,
Right.
you know,
Well, all of our reservoirs are set up to automatically shut down.
shut down.
You know, if they move, they're going to shut down. I'm not so much concerned with the reservoirs because those are heavily engineered. I think more of the problems that we're going to have is with in-ground infrastructure.
I think the pumps are what I worry about, submersible pumps, because they're going to just
Yeah,
knock
in-ground
themselves,
infrastructure is just going to get destroyed, and that the Shake Alert, you know, it may help shut that pump off, but if you have no pipes to pump in, so
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, we'll be reserving water in the reservoirs and probably have to have fill stations until we can get repairs made, depending on how bad it is.
Right. We just had a customer come in today, and we get these all the time. This one I'm taking serious. And I sit down with this gentleman for 45 minutes. He invited us over his property. He wanted to show us how the soils in his neighborhood have dropped over a foot in the last couple of years. He has been beating the county's door They claim that they're gonna take care of it. He feels they're blowing them off. And so we sent one of our staff down today. I haven't got the report back. But it does lie directly in one of the county's critical ordinance areas. It is outside city limits. It just goes right in between these pieces of property that are in the city. Yeah. But he said he can go sit on his back porch every day and watch the hillside slough off. And he invited our staff to come down and watch.
Where is this?
We've got, this is off of Jackson Avenue. We have a main that runs through some backyards, so we're gonna go out and cabin abandon that main. Because of its location, his concern was, he was an old inspector for Kitsap County. He knew that infrastructure was there, and he said, if that breaks, you guys are gonna wash out this whole hillside. So we're gonna cap and terminate that line. We don't need it, it's an old line. New lines ran in time, and we're gonna terminate it. The reason I'm bringing this up is how many more areas in Kitsap County are potentially going to sink like that in this area as the surcharge on the soil with the additional traffic and the building starts changing some of the landscape around here. So.
Interesting. So I got a question ready. So I see really nothing in the capital budget last year, this past year, and modest $140,000.
Correct.
And I know the plan is to get this debt paid off. Is in 3 years you have the one loan paid off, and in 5 years the second loan is paid off.
Correct.
Is this modest capital program sustainable?
No, it's not.
With for the next 3 to 5 years.
Right. So as I said earlier, we want to wrap up that one section of the plan. And then the long-term thought was to start really going back and looking at some of the older infrastructure and doing some assessments on some of that equipment. We started that. We had a program that we thought was going to work well for that. It did not pan out. So we're going to take, Marty and his crew are going to take a different approach at looking at some of the older equipment that we have in the plant that's been there since '84 and start replacing that if it needs it. But it requires tearing a lot of this equipment apart to really get a good look out of it. A lot of this equipment had 30 and 40-year life. One of the things, if you recall, about 4 years ago, we were going to start replacing the drives on the clarifiers based on the information we had. And I had the manufacturer's engineer come out to talk to us. And what we found in that assessment, even though the technical documents had told us that we needed to do this, the company back in the day when these were built, it was a one-size-fits-all timing for replacing these gears. So since we had clarifiers that were basically, 1/2 to 1/3 less the size of the larger ones, that those bowl gears that were in those gear drives actually had a longer life. So you'll probably see within the next 5-10 years we start looking at those types of things.
Well, the plant was built too for much higher flows,
Exactly.
and we haven't achieved those flows, so
Right.
we should have less wear.
Right. And one of the things that we look at too, and this started several years ago, is we went to a reactionary maintenance schedule on some things versus a preventative maintenance. When you weighed out the cost of some of this equipment, the labor cost and the cost to tear it apart to check it, it actually is cheaper and in a shorter life cycle just to replace it than it is to do those maintenance projects. For instance, we take something apart to see how where it's at, and then we've got to replace seals and all these other things. And we're putting a lot of money back into it to find out we're going to tear it apart next year and look at it. So we start extending those type of things out, and just sometimes the reactive maintenance.
So the short answer, where are we at in the next, are we going to make it to the debt retirement before we have to outlay major capital?
If you project it out and the growth rate stayed where it was, then we will, but it doesn't, we will and we won't. We will in a sense that I don't think there's going to be any major requirement for an ERU assessment to the facility, but we may have to increase, maybe up to $1, $1.50 in the next 4 to 5 years.
But the other problem we do have, and you signed a letter, you should tell them about the letter and what went on.
Well, they've Public Works has received the letter.
Oh,
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, but does the committee know, is what I'm saying. So that's why I'm asking you to speak on the letter that, and who signed the letter, so they have
The letter.
So, did you want to speak for the city, Jackie, or you want me?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so there was, as everyone knows, for about the last, I want to say 8 years, there's been a big ordeal about the nutrient discharges in the Puget Sound. There was a lawsuit filed by a company against the state of Washington, and in a reactionary move, or its perceived reactionary move, the state opted to issue a proposal to issue a general permit for nutrient discharge into Puget Sound. That discharge, I can't recall the number of plants, but basically all these plants that discharge into the Salish Sea out here were going to be subject to this general permit once it's formed. Ecology had requested that folks comment on the general permit, but provided no substance as to what that permit would include. So there were some rumors out there. There was some statements made on what potentially this permit could look like once it was issued. And based on the information that was provided, it was easily determined that a huge majority of these plants were never designed to meet the removal limits that were potentially going to be required by ecology under this general permit. So there was a lot of things that went on out there as far as saying, well, they're not going to implement this for 15 years or 20 years, or it's going to be 5 years. Then ecology came out and said as of 2019, folks would start seeing some restrictions within their permitting to address this. So this could potentially put a huge financial impact on all publicly owned treatment works. So all the folks got together that are affected by this and formed a group to basically write a letter to ecology as far as how we felt about the proposal of the general permit. And basically what the context of the letter was is that we had expressed that we felt that ecology was being reactionary based on this lawsuit. There was no science behind it, and there was a lot of factors that needed to be considered, such as the modeling. Some of the results they've got needed to be qualified, and there needed to be a scientific approach to this, not a knee-jerk trying to satisfy a legal requirement. With that said, of all of the publicly owned treatment works that were affected by this that had been identified, which Swarf was one of them, 40% of the folks that were on the list had signed the letter and sent it back and in support, had provided their comments, and then a cumulative letter was developed and sent.
40% is how many plants?
I didn't bring the paperwork. Yeah, I didn't know
10,
we were talking
15,
about.
30?
I would say it's
50.
about 40 plants.
Was that 40?
Yeah.
Just one.
Yeah, it was at least,
I haven't seen the letter in about 3 weeks, so since I sent it to you. And with that said, King County did not sign the letter. However,
They just got fined.
well, my understanding was they couldn't get it through their legal department in time to be able to sign it by the deadline date. But they did notify ecology that they were in support of the letter, but they legally couldn't sign it because this is what I was told. It hadn't cleared the legal department, which accounts for 90%, which only left three or four plants off the list that did not sign it. You had Oak Harbor, Squim, Port Angeles, and Orcas Island were the only ones that didn't sign it. So,
And that's something that could cost us, if, depending on what the rules are and everything, that could come down on us soon. But who knows?
This is nitrates, right?
Could be anything.
Nutrients.
Could be
nutrients,
nutrients.
and phosphorus, yeah. So what happened is there was a plant, I think it was somewhere up north near Bellingham, that actually at the time was doing some kind of assessment on their facility for growth, And so they just ran the numbers on the cost for that removal in their facility. And it was determined their rates would go up like 4.5 times what they currently were. And one of the components that was addressed in the letter was affordability component. As you know, we have a median household income in this area, and usually your utility rates are kept within a very small percentage of that median household income. For instance, right now, West Sound's rate for sewer is at 1.07. What's considered a high end for a wastewater or a sewer utility rate is at 2%. And that's based on our median household income. You start getting to that 2%, and then all these grants and availability for loans and stuff starts diminishing significantly because you're factoring the affordability out of your community, so nobody wants to have you get into more debt. So that's one of the things that was looked at, and that's one of the big concerns about all the POTWs, the publicly owned treatment works, is how would ratepayers be able to afford these required changes?
I sit on the Growth Management Policy Board. We have a meeting tomorrow, and we're working on the 2050 vision, and there are proposals to put nitrate measures in that would be triggers in comprehensive plans if you're not meeting them. And I don't believe our role at Puget Sound Regional Council is to be a regulatory agency, but more to come.
Yeah.
I'm only one of 30 people in the room.
Right.
Sound region.
I'll be honest with you. This is something that does need to be addressed because of the increase in population. The problem is it's not inexpensive to address, and I really believe there needs to be some time and some science put behind how this can be done versus the knee-jerk of everybody's got to do this and do it in the next 5 to 10 years.
Our friends at Baker's Island are leading the charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the cost would be pretty high.
I'm not opposed to it, but
Yeah, people
Yeah.
just can't afford
It'll be-
this stuff anymore.
difficult. I know that.
Yeah.
And if it becomes part of our comprehensive plan, all of a sudden we turn the valve off to growth.
Oh, exactly. That's exactly what's going to happen.
But even when you turn the valve off on growth, you still got the problem of meeting the regulations that they put in
Absolutely.
with the limited amount of people you do have. So it's a real catch-22. And the other problem, like say where we're located, our treatment plant's located with no expansion area. A lot of areas like Puyallup, I think they got a cement wall around something like 10 or 15 acres. They have a reinforced concrete wall goes around this treatment plant. I've been there. What they paid for the wall alone could have built you a treatment plant somewhere. It's crazy. But anyway, they got a lot of land to expand, but you get on to these ones that are like us, and Bremerton has a little area to expand there, but ours, there's really no place to go. We couldn't even condemn property behind us because it's a canyon,
Well, it is a high possibility that those kind of limits were placed on that plant. As I said before, it was never designed for those type of removals. It would not be a matter of expansion. It would be a matter of building a new treatment plant that was designed for those removals.
somewhere else.
And therefore, I could foresee it easily putting the rates to pay for that well out of the affordability index for the people that live in this part of South Kitsap.
It'd be the one we were talking about at Clovis Passage.
I think you would see an exodus.
But that's something that is coming down, and where it lands, we don't know. But it's something that a college is being sued by a very common. These guys that are suing us are not idiots. These guys won against the state of Oregon. It's an attorney firm that knows what they're doing.
Well,
So we don't need earthquake insurance, we need ecology insurance.
Yeah, there you go,
And
yeah.
if you look at what's going on in the political climate right now with the, and I really think with a lot of things being repealed, there is going to be a mass grasping at funds. I potentially see things like the state revolving fund getting hit, public works trust fund, and then there is no funding for water and sewer to go under any kind of funds or loans to be able to do these kinds. It could be very devastating to this community and statewide easily.
Unless technology comes through with a different way of processing. And is that being worked on?
Well, there are technologies to remove it, but there again, the infrastructure and design of the plant was never designed for that. So basically, you would have to build a plant for that type of removal.
It's not something we can add on to because we don't have any place to put it. If we had more property and it was sitting there vacant, yeah, we could add some more process. But the problem is that plant, and there's several plants I know in the Puget Sound area that don't have room. The one there at Federal Way, that one down there is right in a hole, and the one up that Southwest Suburban,
That's the one I was thinking of.
yeah, that one has no room at all. But the other one at Federal Way is the one I'm thinking, if it's the one that one doesn't have any room either. I toured both those plants, and I mean, we'd all be in a creek because,
You're talking about Lake Haven?
yeah,
Lake Haven's, I haven't seen their plant.
yeah, it's a real problem. You know, I mean, and the other thing is, if you don't back up with science, how much money are we really going to be? We can spend a lot of money and do very little good, and that's the problem I'm afraid is going to end up happening. We'll end up doing something dramatic and really get very little for it. And that's, you know, I mean, that's a real crime then. But, you know, if you got scientific proof of what we need to do and how we do need, and what we need to remove, you know, I know you take the sea otters. They found out that people had dumped their cat litter down the toilet and flushed it. There was a parasite that was killing the sea otters. I don't know how many people know that, but that was something they found when they started checking out these dead sea otters. They had a parasite that came from cat litter. You know, but I mean, so, you know, you could think it was a treatment plant killing them, but it's something somebody's dumping down the treatment plant. Something that was never designed to really do, you know. So, you know, and people, what do you do with, they used to tell you anyway, if you have your prescriptions, dump them down the drain. They also told you if you have fluid from your radiator, you know, that it's old, you can dump that down the toilet. I know in the past they would say to dump that down, which I don't think is a great way of going. And, you know, so there's a lot of things we have done in the past, and people have been educated to a certain point, you know, but, you know, where do you, you know, finally they're starting to wake up to even more and more things. But, you know, you used to say, the antifreeze left over that's, you know, from the car, where do you take it? And they say, well, pour it down the drain in the sewer. Well, that's, you know, and different agencies will tell you different things, but they really don't know what they're saying either. I mean, and of course they don't want it in the landfill, so, I mean, the person has stuff that sometimes what they say, well, what do we do with it? And of course now we have a place out here to take different liquids and different things that we have, but, you know, it's education, but we also need to know what to tell them, what's the real results.
So we have, so these groups, this group of the people, the public-owned facilities, wrote the letter to actually get more answers and to say that this is basically unsustainable,
It
in
was
the direction
so
you're headed.
Ecology had proposed issuing a general permit, and they provided a comment period.
And that's really
the
what it was.
comment period, the letter was for the comment period to let them know that there needed to be at least some substance behind it, some methodology, because they really didn't define what was going to be included.
When are you expecting to hear back?
Well, this has been going on for quite a while.
When there's a comment period that you don't necessarily
Yeah,
hear back.
you don't
They
hear
just
back.
take your comments and
So-
maybe they put it into the
Right.
final rule and maybe they don't.
Yeah, so what I did get is I got a summary of, there's several engineering firms that are heavily involved in this. I did get a summary of some of the comments. And as you can expect, most entities that commented that public-owned treatment works were against the issuance until they had done something to kind of understand more directly. Because they threw out a lot of things. They threw out things as far as loading exchanges. So if this receiving water here, we've got the SCORF, you've got Central Kitsap, and then you have City of Bremerton. So they would say, well, overall, you can have 15 on this, and we find out that we're at 6, and, you know, Bremerton is at 4, and Central Kitsap's at 2, then there would be some room, if yours increased, to do a trading, so the whole area was only at a certain number. There was a lot of things thrown out, but nothing specific from ecology. The numbers that they did throw out, and I don't recall exactly what they were, but the facility that we have cannot meet those numbers with the design and the way the facility is.
Even with expanding membraners,
Well, yeah, if we expand a membrane to take all the flow, then yes.
or measure more of it.
Yeah, but we have a limitation for it was another 400,000 or 600,000 gallons of capacity on membranes. As far as expanding it with the infrastructure that we have. You know, there again, you're building a new plant to do this, and there's really no place to add that on. Remember that membrane area doesn't provide a lot of treatment percentage-wise of the overall flow, or the overall,
Permit.
yeah, the permitted quantities into that plant, so. It's not a huge portion. So is there, the plan is December 4th, I believe it is, the district is going to have its final budget meeting and to determine if there's anything to change or adopt prior to adoption of these budgets. Does the city have any issue, any comments, or anything that they're not comfortable with within this budget that they want addressed?
Does this group actually take a vote and say
Yes.
we agree on, I see, okay.
What we do is we recommend this to the city council, then they look at it and they vote on it. And,
The SAC committee does that.
yeah, we do
Yeah.
that to recommend to the city to do to approve the budget as presented. And then the city councilmen, the rest of them have a chance to look it over. And if they have questions, we can answer them or, you know, go from there. But
So would this go to council on the 26th then?
I would say that you would want to take this to,
It should go.
and we don't have it on the work plan, but I would take the budget to our work study, which is in 2 weeks.
do you want Marty there or what do you guys want?
Somebody should,
Okay.
I won't be there, I'm leaving
Okay.
on Saturday, but.
Well, we don't want to overwhelm you with some 2-hour program.
No.
But what we're looking at is whatever you guys want, we'll provide.
I would like to have Noah look it over and input from him. No?
Probably not.
You don't think so?
You know, it's Mark, coming from Mark's side of the house. I mean, we could, but, I mean, in the past, I don't,
No, last year we just,
It was approved here.
It was approved
by
here.
SAC.
Yeah.
I
And then we
know,
went-
I know,
we went
but
to
that
the
doesn't
council.
mean that we are really aware of the subtleties and that
No,
sort of thing.
I think at the work study, and just the portion on the budget that we spent tonight, at the work study would be enough.
Yeah, the main thing right now, you don't have an increase in
Right.
the amount you need to pay to the treatment plant. So, I
Right.
mean, basically, unless there's something in there, you guys say, whoa, what's this? You know, I don't see,
I don't recall our council voting on this budget.
I don't either. I don't know how the city works.
And I don't even know that it needs to go to work study.
Yeah, our ILAs.
I haven't sat in one of these meetings in 4 years.
I thought we did last year, approve the budget.
This body.
No, I thought we,
Yeah, if I remember the ILA.
The ILA was voted on.
This body.
oh,
That was
okay,
it.
that was it.
The annual budget I thought was here, but Jackie, it won't hurt. I'm in Seattle tomorrow. It won't hurt for you to touch base with Mark tomorrow and
Okay.
ask him that question. Have we? I don't recall that
Well,
coming to our council meeting.
And we just realized,
Michael in the past gave
Yeah.
presentations. We've gone away from even that.
Sure.
And I don't recall us voting.
but what the contract did before, we always brought this to you in October, so that people would have a chance to comment, look it over, and then
I would make sure that each council member got a copy of this budget.
and that the one, we just realized when I handed that to the mayor, we only have through page 22 or something. The whole thing didn't come through evidently. I thought that's
Oh,
all there
you're
was.
kidding?
So this was mailed to
Right.
Cindy and
Yeah,
myself and Fred.
yeah, I sent mail copies. That's interesting because we were just talking about how some of the correspondence between West Sound and the city, you folks aren't seeing. I got a request for the insurance that was sent back in August. It was-
And I solved it on my computer because I figured out how to tell the computer that you guys weren't, globally, that you were okay.
Yeah.
And I was helping Mark get it done, and I don't know if it ever got accomplished. So that may be a hang up. But yeah, when I
So
emailed you
the
and said,
PDF
did you send that out, or am I
The
supposed
PDF
to?
didn't have all the pages in it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I can do is I can either bring it down on the thumb drive or we can print copies and drop them off for you. How many copies would you like?
So you got
There's
Fred
3 here.
has
There's
4 more and give one to
Okay.
Mark and our finance director.
So 6? Okay.
Thank you, Randy.
Oh, not a problem. Yeah, I wish
And
we would
then
have known that. I would have brought them tonight. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I just discovered it.
Yeah.
But anyway, the reason we did that was because this is the way the city wanted years ago, and then we, in other words,
So when did you guys meet again before the end of the year?
yeah,
This body?
No.
No,
No, we don't.
The district.
The district's
we
gonna
want
vote on this.
concurrence from the SAC before we even approve our budget.
So that's this meeting right now.
yeah.
Yes.
But once we get that, then we vote on ours sometime here in the future.
December 4th, we have a meeting to go over the budget, so we have plenty of time.
Your group,
Yes.
not this
Not
body
this
right
group.
here. So this body tonight needs to vote on,
Correct.
to accept this budget as
Or
presented.
if you need more time, we don't have a planned meeting till December 4th.
I realize that, but this
Yeah.
body has to vote on this
should.
budget before the end of the year.
Yes.
Correct.
And
Before
Before
the-
December
they're-
4th.
No, December 4th is their,
They're
Right,
meeting.
but they
Yeah,
We're
want, they
waiting
want
till
the
December
SACs.
4th for if there's any further
but
meetings that need.
are you gonna call special meetings so that,
I was gonna say, do we need
But,
another?
no, we need to vote on it tonight. I don't see any.
that's what I'm pointing,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
I mean,
pointing.
this is what we normally do. I mean, unless, if the SAC committee says, gee, I got some big questions, I don't want to vote on this tonight,
We left time.
then we left time. But what we should do is I make a motion that we approve the budget as distributed. And then if we get a second,
So one of the neat things about this budget, and I know that the city doesn't have this opportunity and West Sound doesn't either, we have a defined fixed revenue based on ERUs. So we know what the revenue is.
and we have an
Which,
increase in
it's
revenue.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not dependent on usage or. yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
whether the sun shines or
Did-
it rains.
Did I miss it and somebody seconded? Or
Nobody seconded
No,
it.
Oh.
no, I didn't.
Jim made the
Hopefully.
motion.
He did.
Yes, I
Oh,
think-
I said that, I heard you say, I would, I didn't know
oh,
if you did.
no, I
No, he
did.
did.
Okay, I'll second it.
Yeah.
So, any discussion?
Would you like one of us to attend the work study session?
I don't know. I don't,
Okay, because we've got to let Mark make that decision.
we don't even know if they're gonna
Okay.
bring it up at a work study session.
yeah, we're gonna
Okay.
circle back tomorrow, and Jackie's gonna check with Mark.
Okay.
I don't recall this coming, since Michael's left, there was an annual presentation that was done, but since Michael's left, I don't ever recall the city council voting on it.
And-
I remember when I was on this committee,
My MO is to send out the minutes right away so that you guys can, it's fresh in your mind. So I will, in the body of my email, say the answer to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever pleases the city so they feel comfortable, whatever.
So we have a motion on the floor, but we need to, do we need to have Mark comment prior to
that's
voting?
irrelevant
think so.
to whether or not city council gets it.
It can still be tweaked from here. I think if we have something that, say, we find a mistake or whatever, then we may have to come back. Let's say we found some big mistake and we have to come back here as a group. We have to meet in December or later in November or whatever, we can do that. But what we see now, we don't seem to have any question. The budget's the same as last year, other than different projects.
This will not change if you folks vote on it.
Yeah.
If there is something that needs to be addressed.
Then we come back to
everybody
the-
will be made aware.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Well, you're gonna do discussion.
Well, yes, I thought we were done, but go
Oh,
ahead.
No, I was just gonna bring up, unless, if the mayor has any, issues, this is pretty straightforward. I think the unknowns.
Well, as Randy pointed out, you're adopting this budget as it was presented.
Right.
It's gonna change.
We have to come
Then you're
back.
gonna have a special meeting.
And that, yeah,
And you're gonna
so,
vote on it again.
from a case of.
Or amending the budget.
Yeah,
Right.
case of, you can't plan a budget on unknowns. With the huge discussion we had about DOE and.
Sure.
And
That's-
the earthquake and everything else.
Right.
On that side of the coin. So, this is a pretty vanilla budget. It's pretty straightforward, there's no surprises, it's business as usual.
Right.
Meeting the debt service, et cetera. So I don't have any issues. I just want to say, you can't write something for every scenario.
Right. And I don't either, but I don't necessarily have the expertise. So if Mark is going to take a look at it, and he sees any problem, we can come back and discuss it. But as presented now, and because it's so similar, I think we can vote so that you can move on with what you need to do.
So December 4th, we're having a special meeting. That means in December, we will be voting to adopt this.
Right.
Our district.
Between now and then,
Right.
if
Yeah.
there's any second thoughts or anything that needs to be discussed,
Gotcha.
there's still
Yeah.
some time.
Okay. Are we done discussing? All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, then that passes.
Hence the word advisory in our title.
All right, anything else we need to discuss?
There's one more item, Marina Pump Station.
And
That would be the city.
That's me. That's on me. With Mike Pleasance leaving the city, now that project has kind of come over onto my table, and that's why I was checking my phone to see if I'd gotten an answer to emails I sent out today, asking the consulting engineers if they were truly going to be done with the 30% design by the end of this year, which is what we're on track to do that, but I was just double checking with them. And then I've also asked them for a scope and budget and timeline for the bid ready documents, which will be in 2020. So that's where we're at.
where did Mike go to?
Silverdale Water.
Oh,
Morgan poached him.
yeah,
He came after him. He didn't just apply.
yeah. Don't surprise me. No,
Morgan's,
because,
I'm not happy with him.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
yeah, well, we helped out Belfair, and of course they poached our employees.
Yeah. It happens.
What's your turnover
It
rate
happens.
this last year?
Our turnover rate, 1 retiree and 1 dismissal and 2 resignations
Out of
out of
4.
But, Randy came on board, new management, and some people decided to go elsewhere.
And that always happens.
Yeah.
When there's a change in management, it's,
Yeah.
some people just can't get straightened around with, we're going to change the status quo,
Yeah, and I think too, when you have in-house people applying for the same jobs, then you can't pick both, so, somebody's always a little bit unhappy, and that happens.
is that pretty much it then, for your
Yeah,
update?
unless
Okay,
somebody has questions about it.
okay. Then we're looking at our next meeting, Is that gonna be January?
January,
Or
February?
February? Probably we wouldn't actually need to meet in January.
I can look at, see what the
I don't
last,
think historically.
what last year's
we've met
were.
in January. I think it's been February, but I might be.
No, there was a meeting on January 16th.
Okay.
There was, this year.
But
And
I
then the
don't see
meeting went to
anything-
April 17th. But if there,
I
from
don't
what
see
Mark
anything
explained.
coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, basically what we've done is kind of drop it to about 3 months. You know, unless something comes up where, oh geez, we had, you know, something went wrong and we're looking at something else. I mean, like we'll call a special meeting because we need $500,000 to borrow for, you know,
So
mostly concrete, so I can't think of the plant burning too much, other than electrical equipment or something. But, you know, unless a tank breaks or something, you know, it's something weird that we don't expect.
So in February, it would traditionally be falling on, let's see,
Excuse me.
about the 19th?
But, I mean,
You think that sounds good?
Fine work as right now.
And let's schedule that. And what about meeting place? Still here at City Hall, or do we wanna?
Whatever anybody wants to do.
Yeah.
It's.
It's up to you guys, whatever you want.
Disneyland?
Disneyland,
City
yes.
Hall it'll be. Okay,
City Hall? Okay.
February 19th, City Hall, 6:30. Then that's it. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
And when the weather gets nicer, we'll have it done at the new building, the treatment plant.
Yeah, we'll have it in the storage thing,
Yeah.
a meeting in there. so we
What
can
was
admire it.
the thought process behind the rotation? Do you recall? I never did get that road.
Oh, the rotation, I'll tell you what the rotation came from. It was,